The night was unusually quiet, almost too quiet. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes sat alone on a worn metal crate, her fingers tracing the edges of a faded photograph tucked inside her uniform pocket. It was a picture of her daughter and husband, smiling under the bright sun during a family picnic she hadn't seen in months. Tomorrow, she reminded herself, everything could change. Her team waited in the shadows nearby, each soldier silently preparing in their own way. The weight of what lay ahead pressed down on them all, but no one dared speak of it. Sarah had been on many missions before, but this one felt different, more dangerous, more uncertain. Intelligence had warned of an enemy stronghold deep behind hostile lines, and their task was clear: infiltrate, gather crucial intel, and extract without leaving a trace. Simple in theory, but impossible in practice. She glanced at the sky, a blanket of stars barely visible through the thin clouds. The cool night air did little to calm the storm inside her chest. She remembered the faces of every soldier who had never returned from a mission just like this. Those memories pushed her to steel herself for the unknown. Her radio crackled softly. "Team, get ready to move in 5. Sarah's voice was steady, calm, betraying none of the fear she felt. She took a deep breath and checked her gear one last time. Every detail mattered: the tight grip on her rifle, the weight of her helmet, the strap of her tactical vest. As she stood, the faintest rustling of leaves signaled that the others were moving into position. They disappeared into the darkness, shadows blending with shadows. Sarah paused, her heart pounding, then followed. The forest was dense, each step careful and deliberate. The team moved like ghosts, avoiding dry branches and broken twigs that might give away their location. Sarah kept close to the rear, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, but beneath it lingered something sharper: the unmistakable scent of danger. Suddenly, a twig snapped somewhere ahead. Sarah froze, signaling the others to halt. The night stretched long and silent again, but every second felt like an eternity. She whispered, "Stay alert," eyes wide. Her team nodded silently, weapons at the ready. They pressed on, inching closer to the enemy outpost. The faint glow of campfires flickered between the trees ahead. Sarah could hear muffled voices, the low rumble of conversation mixed with occasional laughter. The enemy unaware that they were being watched. She crouched behind a fallen log, pulling out a small device to intercept communications. Her fingers moved swiftly but carefully. Every intercepted word was a piece of a puzzle that might save lives. Suddenly, a rustle to the left caught her attention. She turned just in time to see a figure slip from the shadows. Before she could react, a sharp pain exploded in her side. The world wobbled. Her breath caught as she stumbled, but she forced herself to stay upright. The bullet had grazed her shoulder. "Medic," she called out softly, but no one came. The team was still hidden, watching, waiting for her next move. Pain radiated through her arm, but Sarah gritted her teeth and steadied her rifle. "Keep moving," she ordered. "Don't stop. We're not done yet." Despite the injury, her mind was sharp. They had to reach the objective. The lives of her team depended on it, and on her. Each step was agony, but she refused to let the pain slow her down. Her team followed, trust shining in their eyes. Sarah's leadership was the glue holding them together. If she faltered, they all might fall. The campfires were closer now. She could hear footsteps, the scrape of boots on dirt. Her heart pounded, adrenaline pushing her beyond exhaustion. Then came the burst of gunfire. Bullets tore through the night, shattering branches and sending splinters into the air. The ambush was sudden and brutal. Sarah dove to the ground, pulling her team down with her. Shouts and screams echoed as chaos erupted. She fired back, each shot deliberate and precise, despite the burning pain in her shoulder. She caught a glimpse of one of her soldiers hit, crumpling silently beside her. There was no time to grieve. "Fall back. "Regroup at the ridge," she shouted, voice cutting through the noise. Pain screamed through her body with every move, but Sarah pushed forward. This mission was far from over, and so was she. The gunfire came without warning, sharp and unforgiving, tearing through the stillness of the night. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes barely had time to react before chaos exploded around her. The ambush was brutal, a deadly trap they hadn't anticipated. Bullets zipped past, striking trees and kicking up dirt, forcing her and her team to scatter for cover. Her heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline flooding every vein. "Get down. Take cover," Sarah shouted, her voice steady despite the roar of gunfire. Her team scrambled, diving behind fallen logs, thick trunks, anything that could shield them from the hailstorm. The enemy was everywhere, invisible shadows firing from the dark underbrush. Sarah pressed her back against a rough tree trunk, clutching her rifle tight. She peeked out, eyes scanning rapidly for targets. The forest was alive with the crack of gunfire and shouted commands, but the enemy's exact position was hard to pin down. They were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped in the heart of hostile territory with little room to maneuver. Her shoulder throbbed painfully. The bullet wound from earlier burning deep, a constant reminder of how close death was. But there was no time to think about pain. "We hold this position," she barked. "Suppress their fire and wait for my signal." Her team fired back with disciplined precision. The sounds of gunfire filled the air, echoing between the trees. Sarah's breaths came fast but controlled, each second a battle between fear and focus. She knew the enemy wanted to break them here, but they couldn't afford to lose ground. A sudden movement to her left caught her eye. She turned quickly and fired, the recoil jarring through her aching body. The enemy dropped silently into the shadows, but she knew there were more. Too many more. Medic status. Sarah called out, voice rising above the gunfire. "Two wounded," came the quick reply. "Private Morgan is down, bleeding bad." Her stomach twisted, but she didn't hesitate. "Cover me. I'm moving up." Ignoring the searing pain in her shoulder, Sarah sprinted across the clearing, dodging bullets as she went. Every step was agony, but she forced herself forward. Morgan lay behind a fallen log, blood seeping from a deep wound in his leg. His eyes were wide with pain, but when he saw Sarah, relief softened his face. "I'm here," she said softly, tearing strips from her own shirt to stem the bleeding. Her hands worked quickly, steady despite the shaking. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire split the air again. Sarah threw herself over Morgan, shielding him with her body. Pain exploded in her side as another bullet grazed her ribs, but she didn't cry out. She couldn't. "Not now. Hold on," she whispered, locking eyes with Morgan. "We're getting out of here." Around them, her team fought fiercely, buying time with suppressive fire. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos, issuing orders with calm authority. "Alpha team, flank left. Bravo, hold the center. We move as one." The enemy pressed hard, relentless in their attack. But Sarah's team was determined, and her courage gave them strength. She wasn't just their leader. She was their anchor in the storm. Minutes dragged like hours as the firefight raged. Bullets tore through leaves and bark, the air thick with smoke and dust. Sarah's vision blurred, the pain in her body growing unbearable, but her mind stayed sharp. "Fall back to the ridge," she commanded, voice firm. "We regroup and plan our next move." With great effort, Sarah hoisted Morgan to his feet, supporting him with one arm while clutching her rifle with the other. Her team followed, retreating slowly but steadily through the dense forest. The ridge was a small rise overlooking the ambush site. From there, they could assess the situation and call for backup. Sarah scanned the horizon, eyes burning with determination. The mission wasn't over, not by a long shot. As they reached the ridge, Sarah sank to her knees, gasping for air. The wound in her side flared with every breath. Around her, her team gathered, faces grim but resolute. They had survived the ambush, but at a heavy cost. The enemy was still out there, waiting, watching. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, pushing past the pain. She knew this was just the beginning. Her body was battered, but her spirit was unbroken. There was no giving up, not when lives depended on her. "I'm not done yet," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. And with that, the fight for survival continued. The forest was thick with tension as Lieutenant Sarah Hayes pushed herself up from the ridge, every movement a sharp reminder of the bullets embedded in her body. The pain was a constant companion, gnawing at her with relentless intensity, but she refused to give it power over her mind. Her team gathered close, their faces pale but determined. They looked to her not just as a leader, but as a symbol of strength, a beacon amid the chaos. Her shoulder throbbed, the wound angry and raw, but Sarah gritted her teeth and focused on the task at hand. "We can't stay here," she said quietly, voice steady. "The enemy will regroup. We need to move." Her team nodded, gathering their gear and readying themselves to push deeper into enemy territory. The mission was far from over, and every second they lingered made survival less likely. Sarah scanned their surroundings, noting the thick trees and underbrush that could provide cover, but also trap them like prey. They moved slowly, each step calculated. Sarah's vision blurred occasionally, the blood loss making her lightheaded, but she forced herself to stay alert. She kept her rifle ready, eyes darting for any sign of movement. Every crackle of leaves or snap of a twig made her heart jump. The enemy could be anywhere. A sudden, low moan came from behind her. She turned quickly to see Private Morgan struggling, his leg injury worsening with every step. Sarah's heart clenched. She couldn't afford to slow down, but she also couldn't leave him behind. "Lean on me," she said, slipping his arm over her shoulder. Morgan winced but trusted her, gripping her tightly. Together, they pressed forward, the rest of the team forming a protective circle around them. The forest seemed to close in, shadows deepening as the night crept closer. The weight of their mission settled heavily on their shoulders. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed through the trees ahead. Sarah froze, signaling for silence. The team stopped instantly, breath held, weapons raised. The rustling grew louder, and then a figure emerged, not an enemy, but a local guide they had arranged to meet. Relief washed over them, but it was brief. The guide's face was grim. "Enemy patrols are everywhere," he whispered urgently. "You must move quickly if you want to survive." Sarah nodded, swallowing the growing knot of fear. They had to push forward. Turning to her team, she gave the order, "Stay close. Move fast. We're almost to the extraction point." Every step was a battle against exhaustion and pain. Sarah's legs ached and her side burned, but the thought of quitting never crossed her mind. She thought of her family, the faces of her team, the countless soldiers depending on her resolve. Giving up was not an option. As they neared the extraction zone, the sound of helicopters droning in the distance gave them hope. But hope was fragile. The enemy was closing in fast, and time was running out. Suddenly, gunfire erupted once more, closer this time. The enemy had found them. Sarah's team hit the ground, taking cover behind thick tree trunks and boulders. Bullets whizzed past, some too close for comfort. Sarah's breathing was ragged, her wounds burning hotter than ever, but her mind was clear. She called out orders, directing her team's return fire with precision. "Hold your ground. Don't let them flank us." The firefight lasted what felt like hours, but in reality it was only minutes. Each second stretched endlessly, every heartbeat a drum of survival. Sarah caught sight of a soldier down, and her stomach twisted. Without hesitation, she crawled to his side, dragging him behind cover. The battle was far from over, but Sarah's unwavering determination kept her moving. Pain clawed at her body, but she fought it down, focusing on the mission, on her team, on life. As the sounds of enemy fire began to fade, replaced by the thrum of approaching helicopters, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. They had made it this far. They would live to fight another day. But in that moment of fragile peace, she whispered again, barely audible, "I'm not done yet." Sarah's breath came in shallow gasps as she gripped the rough bark of a towering pine. The pain in her side and leg throbbed fiercely, but giving up was not an option. The night pressed in around her, thick with danger and uncertainty. Somewhere beyond the shadows, the enemy prowled, relentless and deadly. Her team huddled close, faces pale but resolute. They were battered, wounded, but unbroken. Sarah scanned the dark forest, searching for any sign of the extraction point. It had to be close. Hope flickered in her chest like a fragile flame. "Listen up," she whispered, her voice low but steady. "We push forward. No hesitation. No slowing down." Each word was a promise she intended to keep, not just to herself, but to every soldier depending on her. Slowly, painfully, Sarah pushed to her feet. Every movement sent waves of agony through her body, but she forced herself onward. She wasn't just carrying her own weight. She was carrying the hope of her team, the lives of those who had followed her into this nightmare. The forest floor was uneven, littered with fallen branches and jagged rocks. Each step was a careful calculation, a balancing act between survival and surrender. Sarah kept her eyes sharp, her senses heightened. The slightest sound, a rustle of leaves, a distant snap, could mean an ambush. "Stay close," she commanded quietly. Eyes open, weapons ready. Private Jensen limped beside her, clutching his side. Sarah glanced at him, pain flashing in his eyes, but also something stronger, determination. They were soldiers, forged in the crucible of combat. Pain was an enemy they would not yield to. As they moved, the distant thrum of helicopter blades broke through the night. Relief washed over the group, but it was mixed with urgency. The enemy was closing in fast, and time was slipping away. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the trees. Gunfire. Bullets whipped past them, kicking up dirt and leaves. Sarah dropped to the ground, pulling Jensen with her. The team scattered into cover, hearts pounding in the deafening silence between shots. Sarah's breath was ragged, but her mind was clear. She raised her rifle and fired back, each shot deliberate, calculated. The enemy was trying to pin them down, prevent their escape. But Sarah's voice cut through the chaos, rallying her team. "Suppressive fire. Cover the flank," she ordered, grit thick in her tone. "We move on my signal." The firefight intensified, a brutal test of will and skill. Sarah's body screamed in protest, wounds burning hotter with each movement. But surrender was impossible. She refused to be a casualty of this mission. Amidst the gunfire, a figure fell, Private Lopez. Sarah's heart clenched. She risked a glance, seeing him clutch his arm, blood staining the forest floor. She cursed the pain tearing through her side, but didn't hesitate. "Medics, move in," she barked, crawling toward him with agonizing slowness. Her hands shook as she tore strips from her shirt to bind his wound. The radio crackled. Backup just minutes away, but every second counted. With Lopez stabilized, Sarah's team regrouped, pushing forward with renewed vigor. The extraction point was near, but the enemy's presence was relentless, shadows closing in from every direction. Sarah gritted her teeth, focusing on the faint glow ahead, a clearing bathed in moonlight. Safety. Salvation. Her legs trembled, but she forced them onward. Pain and fatigue warred with willpower, but willpower won. As they emerged into the clearing, the helicopter's spotlight cut through the darkness. Rescue was within reach. With one last burst of strength, Sarah stood tall despite the pain, raising her hand in signal. They were not finished. Not yet. Because as long as breath filled her lungs, as long as the fight remained, Sarah knew one thing. She was not done yet. The whir of the helicopter blades sliced through the thick night air, a beacon of hope for the exhausted team. Sarah's body trembled as she helped the wounded Private Lopez to his feet. Every movement sent shooting pains through her side and leg, but she pushed through the agony, knowing they had only moments before the enemy closed in again. The clearing was bathed in a harsh spotlight, casting long shadows and making them all vulnerable. Sarah scanned the tree line anxiously, her instincts screaming danger. The enemy was still out there, lurking, waiting for a chance to strike. "Get ready to move," Sarah ordered, her voice sharp despite her weariness. We board quickly, no hesitation. Her team scrambled toward the helicopter, each step weighted with exhaustion, but fueled by desperation. Sarah kept a close eye on the perimeter, rifle at the ready, heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The night seemed to hold its breath, every rustle a potential threat. As they neared the aircraft, the thud of distant footsteps echoed from the woods. Enemy reinforcements. Sarah's pulse quickened, but she didn't falter. She moved faster, pulling Lopez and Jensen along, urgency driving them forward. The pilot called out over the noise, "Hurry. You're almost safe." Sarah was the last to step aboard, supporting her injured teammates. She barely noticed the searing pain in her side as she climbed up. The moment her body hit the floor of the helicopter, she allowed herself a brief breath of relief. They were alive. For now. Inside, the team settled, some moaning quietly, others silent in shock. Sarah's mind raced, adrenaline slowly ebbing away to reveal the heavy toll of the night's battle. Blood loss, exhaustion, pain, all real and raw. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing her daughter's smiling face. The thought steeled her resolve. She had made it this far. She would make a home. The helicopter lifted off, the forest shrinking below them. But the danger was not over. Sarah knew the enemy wouldn't give up easily. The mission had scars that would last far beyond this night. Her radio crackled to life. "Command to Eagle 1, do you copy?" Sarah's voice came steady, despite the fatigue. "Eagle 1 here. We're inbound. Requesting medevac and reinforcements at LZ." "Copy that," came the reply. "Support is en route. Hold tight." Sarah exhaled slowly. The promise of help was a lifeline. As the helicopter sped toward the safety of their base, Sarah surveyed her team. Bruised, battered, but alive. The fire in their eyes had not dimmed. She pressed her hand to the wound in her side, the pain sharp but bearable. "We're not done," she whispered. "Not yet." The mission had nearly broken them, but their spirit was unshakable. And Sarah Hayes, she was far from finished. The helicopter's engines roared in her ears as Sarah lay back, every inch of her body screaming in pain. The dim interior lights flickered above, casting long shadows over the faces of her team, all battered and worn but alive. She felt the blood drying on her uniform, sticky and warm, a constant reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. Medics moved swiftly through the cramped cabin, checking wounds, administering oxygen, offering quiet words of reassurance. Sarah caught a glimpse of herself in a small reflective panel, pale, bloodied, but eyes sharp with determination. She was not just a survivor, she was a fighter. The flight seemed endless, time stretching thin between moments of sharp pain and brief flashes of hope. Sarah's mind drifted, replaying every second of the ambush, the bullets, the screams, the desperate scramble to stay alive. But through it all, one thing remained clear. She had refused to give in. The helicopter finally touched down at the base's medical facility, wheels grinding against the concrete. Soldiers and medical staff hurried to meet them, their faces grim but focused. Sarah was carefully lifted out, the world spinning around her. Inside the sterile hospital room, doctors and nurses worked quickly. The wound in her side was serious, but they assured her it was survivable. Sarah's eyes stayed open, tracking every movement, every sound. Pain throbbed like a storm beneath her skin, but her spirit remained unbroken. "Lieutenant Hayes," a doctor said softly, checking her vitals, "you're incredibly lucky to be alive. You and your team showed extraordinary courage." Sarah managed a weak smile. We did what we had to do. Days passed in a blur of treatments and brief visits from her team. Each face brought stories of survival and loss, of strength and sacrifice. Sarah listened, drawing strength from their resilience. The mission had tested them in ways they had never imagined, but they had emerged together. Her mind wandered to home, to her daughter's bright smile, the quiet mornings they shared, the future waiting beyond the battlefield. That future was still possible. She had to believe that. Despite the pain, Sarah's determination grew. The fight was far from over, not just for her, but for all those depending on her leadership. Recovery would be long, but she was ready. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the hospital window, Sarah sat up slowly. Her body ached, but she felt a spark, a fire rekindled. "I'm not done yet," she whispered, the words a promise to herself, to her team, and to everyone who believed in her. This was only the beginning of a new battle, one of healing, hope, and unyielding courage. And Sarah Hayes was ready to face it head-on. Sarah's recovery was grueling. Every day brought new challenges, sharp pains, endless physical therapy, moments when her spirit threatened to crack under the weight of her injuries. But she fought fiercely, the same way she had fought on the battlefield. There was no room for doubt, no space for surrender. Her team visited often, their presence a reminder of the mission they had survived together. They spoke of the battles still raging overseas, of comrades lost and battles won. Their stories fueled Sarah's determination to heal quickly, to return stronger. At night, when the hospital grew quiet, Sarah's mind wandered to the moment she took those 6 bullets, the flash of pain, the shock, the disbelief in her team's eyes. Most would have given up then, but not her. She had whispered through the blood and pain, "I'm not done yet." That wasn't just a phrase, it was a creed, a battle cry that carried her through the darkest moments. Physical therapy was torture and triumph. Each step was a reminder of how far she had fallen and how far she needed to go. The simple act of walking became a victory, a declaration that she was reclaiming her life. Nurses and therapists marveled at her grit, calling her a miracle. One afternoon, during a particularly difficult session, Sarah's therapist paused, studying her with a thoughtful look. "You have the heart of a soldier," she said softly. "Not many could push through what you have." Sarah smiled faintly, though every muscle ached. "I'm not done yet," she repeated, the words steady and fierce. News arrived that her unit was being redeployed. The thought stirred a mix of emotions, pride, fear, urgency. She wanted to be with them, to lead them again, but her body was still fragile. Doctors warned against rushing back too soon. Still, Sarah began planning her comeback. She studied reports, strategized from her hospital bed, and stayed connected with her team through video calls. Leadership wasn't just about being on the front lines. It was about strength in every form. Her family rallied around her, their support a lifeline. Her daughter's letters, filled with drawings and words of encouragement, arrived daily, a reminder of what she fought for beyond the battlefield. Months passed. Sarah's strength returned slowly but steadily. She stood taller, her wounds healing into scars that told the story of survival. The day came when she was cleared for light duty. The hospital room where she had fought so hard to heal became a place of new beginnings. Walking out of the hospital, Sarah felt the weight of the past months behind her, but also the promise of the future. She was ready not just to return, but to lead, to inspire, to show that resilience could conquer even the darkest battles. Her story was far from over, because Sarah Hayes was a soldier born to fight, to survive, and to never ever quit. She whispered once more, steady and strong, "I'm not done yet." The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the military base, casting long shadows on the polished floors. Sarah stood tall, the scars on her body a silent testament to the battles she had endured. She wore her uniform with quiet pride, every crease and badge a symbol of survival and strength. Today was her first day back in the field since the ambush, the moment she had been fighting toward for months. Her team gathered around her, faces a mixture of respect, relief, and admiration. They had waited for this day, for their leader to return, stronger and more determined than ever. Sarah's heart swelled with a fierce sense of purpose. The pain was still there, lingering like an unwelcome ghost, but it no longer controlled her. As she addressed her team, her voice was steady and commanding. "We've been through hell together, and we'll face whatever comes next the same way, united and unbreakable. I'm not done yet, and neither are any of you." The squad nodded, a renewed fire burning in their eyes. They moved out together, a single force forged through shared hardship and unyielding loyalty. The mission ahead was dangerous, but Sarah's experience had sharpened her instincts. Every decision was deliberate, every movement precise. She led with confidence born from pain and perseverance, guiding her team through terrain that once seemed impossible to navigate. In the moments of quiet between firefights, Sarah reflected on how far she had come. The 6 bullets that had nearly ended her life were now part of her story, but they did not define her. Instead, they fueled her resilience, reminding her that survival was not just about the body, but the spirit. Her team moved swiftly, covering each other, communicating with silent signals honed by countless hours together. They were more than soldiers, they were family. One afternoon, deep in enemy territory, they encountered an unexpected threat. Gunfire erupted suddenly, forcing them to take cover behind a rocky outcrop. Sarah's wounds throbbed, but her focus was razor-sharp. She coordinated the defense, her commands clear and calm. The firefight was brutal, but Sarah's leadership turned the tide. Her team pushed forward, driving the enemy back. When the last shot was fired, the forest fell eerily silent. As they regrouped, Sarah allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. She looked at her team, alive, breathing, victorious, and felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. She knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. There would be more battles, more pain, and more sacrifices. But Sarah also knew this. No matter what came, she would face it head-on, because she had already stared death in the face and refused to back down. "I'm not done yet," she whispered, louder this time, a vow carried on the wind. Her story was one of courage, resilience, and unbreakable will, a story that would inspire generations to come. Sarah Hayes was more than a survivor. She was a warrior, and her fight was just beginning.